Before we begin, I just want to show off this copy I have of the original Justice League A New Beginning here. While you still can probably get omnibus versions of this, I'm not sure you'll get the original editor's note by Andrew Helfer, in which he talks about the problems he had in putting together a new Justice League after Crisis on Infinite Earths. You see, as a result of COIE, all the big name characters like Superman, Wonder Woman, and The Flash were going through some major changes, and basically the Justice League team, led by Helfer, was told to keep his hands off. In Helfer's own words, Destiny knocked and no one was home. So basically, along with Keith Giffen, he came with a few curves to make this Justice League book work. The first was, since they had no idea what characters they could be using, let's focus on the environment. The second was to scratch the Justice League of America part and instead make it just the Justice League, or Justice League International. Finally, the most important part is, since they were focusing more on the environment instead of the heroes, would it be too much of a stretch if they made them funny? And thus was born the Justice League International, also known as the Funny Justice League. And as much as it might seem that a mainstream superhero book would actually just consist of mostly in-jokes and pop culture references, they really made it work, as long as Giffen and DeMatteis were the ones running the show. In hindsight, the problem seems quite obvious. After Giffen and DeMatteis left, the various creative teams, yes, there were almost 3 different Justice League books at one point, struggled to do anything with these characters. They couldn't do traditional action stories because some readers wanted the Funny League. On the other hand, traditional action stories were becoming 90s garbage at the time, so they had no idea what they could do. Justice League Task Force, as the writer Christopher Priest would exclaim, was a book in which nothing happened. And DC obviously felt the same way as well about all 3 books. After underwhelming sales, all 3 of them were cancelled to give rise to Grant Morrison's JLA. Which probably was for the best, as at that time the creators were clearly running out of ideas. But what would sadly happen to all the JLI characters clearly was undeserved. Most of the JLI characters would be used as C-list fodder by other writers, killing them off whenever they suited them. The worst part, however, was when these characters who had, a reputation of being the Funny League were treated as jokes and not important enough, constantly being belittled by the more serious heroes, even people who had been on the Justice League at the time. And of course, in order to suit their own stories, some of these characters were turned evil instead. It's really a shame what happened to most of these characters. At least some people like Blue Beetle got a much more dignified send-off. Poor Ice Maiden gets her skin ripped off her. Rocket Red, a character who hadn't appeared in a long time, would make one last appearance in which he kills himself to save his teammates. It's really tragic that what happened to these people, and clearly, whatever reputation they had as the Funny League, they didn't deserve this. However, the Justice League International would get one last good chance at proving themselves. The 24-issue maxi series, Justice League Generation Lost. The series deals with a resurrected Maxwell Lord and a few former Justice League International members, along with some legacy characters and their attempts to stop him. It's a mostly decent series. I say mostly decent because while it does do some things right, like trying to explain Max's turn to villainy, it does do some things like some pointless retcons to Ice's backstory and other stuff. Even though there are a lot of funny superhero comic books nowadays, in Andrew Helfer's own words, we were there first. And I agree. As much as some people don't like this era of the Justice League, I feel that it's is and always will be an integral part of DC Comics history. Well, that wraps up this week, and I am not looking forward to next week, where I try to make sense of what the hell is in continuity after DC's New 52.